I was at Mass a couple weeks ago and I couldn't help but notice something a little interesting. It was the children's Mass, so it was pretty chaotic and wonderful and distracting and terrible all at the same time. You know, like children. And while the kids were distracting in themselves, what caught my attention was actually the parents on either side of me. On my right was a woman who was very engaged with everything that was going on. She had her hymnal out, she was singing songs with a beautiful voice, and she even had the order of the Mass out showing the children what was going on. And on my right was a guy who clearly wanted to be somewhere else. He didn't have a book out, he wasn't singing the songs, and I'm not even sure if he was paying attention because he was mostly just on his phone. But hey, I'm not here to judge. Maybe he was following the Mass on his iBreviary app. Maybe he was waiting for an important phone call from someone stuck in the hospital. Or maybe he really just didn't want to be there, in which, kudos for him for getting up and getting all the way to Mass. Small victories. Whatever the case, it's really not the point. What interested me was watching the children watch their parents. While a little fidgety and full of energy, the children of the woman more or less imitated their mother. They followed in the book, they sang the songs, and seemed to be having a good time. The children of the man with the phone, it seemed like they were being put through an even bigger torture chamber than their father. They didn't pay attention, they didn't sing along, and the boredom on their faces seemed painful. Now, there are definitely some lofty conclusions we could make from this situation, like faithful parents will have faithful children. Active involvement in the liturgy means that someone is a good person and has a good faith. It is the failure of the parents and the parents alone if a child does not grow up to be a good Christian. Of course, we know that these statements are not universally true. Many faithful people have children that reject the faith, and many faithful people came from non-religious families. Faith is a gift from God that can't be forced or willed by a teacher or a parent. And yet, there's definitely something here worth thinking about. A child's mind is like a sponge, soaking up everything they see and hear, even if we don't think they're learning. It's amazing what they remember and what ends up being really important in their lives. While the typical teenager works to separate themselves from their parents, creating an individual identity in the world, so much of our value system, outlook on the world, personality, and way we treat others, things that don't generally change a whole lot in our lives, are imprinted on and ingrained in us at a very young age. Like it or not, parents, you are the principal teachers of the faith to your children. That's why you gotta read the fine print. That's where they get you. Your children watch the way you pray and don't pray, what you reverence and what you don't reverence, what's important to you and what's not important to you, how you handle tragedy and stress and joy and love, and how you don't handle these things. When they see you treating Mass as something that you have to do, or when they're dropped off at church while you, the parent, goes to do something else, or when they see you going to church and always talking about God, but experience you as hostile, uncharitable, and unforgiving, what do you think they're going to learn about the faith? On the other hand, when they see that the Mass is something that brings you life and joy, or when they're shown that what we do is important and meaningful, or when they see that going to church makes a difference in your life, offering a catalyst for humility and conversion that makes your family better, what do you think they're going to learn about the faith? Now, it's true. Faith is a gift from God. There's nothing we could ever do to make someone believe if they haven't first been given this gift. And yet it's also true that faith is not something that just fell from the heavens outside of our human context. Faith is something that was handed down to us by those who had lived it before us. While God may be the only one who can actually make the seed grow, it's up to us, first the parents, but really all of us faithful, to plant the seed in the first place and to nurture it so it even has a chance. As we look out into our ever-increasing secular world and see more and more young people growing up without faith or leaving the church, it can be really easy to point the finger at that terrible world or this faithless generation. Really, it should give us pause. As those who possess the faith of Jesus Christ, something that was handed on to us by those who had lived it long before us, what are we doing, or what are we not doing, to make sure that this faith gets handed on to the next generation? In other words, what are we doing to make sure that it doesn't stop with us?